going on out there.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to we haven't done these in a few weeks, actually. It was weekly, but now we're doing our bi-weekly Marketing with Purpose Facebook Live. And for those of you who can't stick around and hang out with us the entire time, we will pull this into a podcast and release it out there and on our blog for you to listen to as you're walking your dogs or going about your morning routine. So today I'm excited to introduce you to two guests who are with me from the Missouri United Methodist Foundation. And you guys have been my clients for a really long time, almost since, maybe even before I was an adult. You are my clients. So let's kick it off. Well, first, let me tell you why we're all here together. So what was it? A year or more ago, the Missouri United Methodist Foundation decided that they were going to start doing educational events online to educate their audience and to deepen their relationships with them. And you guys are still going strong. And I'm really proud of that. Yay. That's part of the challenge, right? Is just keeping going. And they're going really well for you. So I wanted to celebrate that. Okay. So first things first, why don't you guys tell me, David, you're going to tell me about what the Missouri United Methodist Foundation is and what you guys do.
Okay. Well, the foundation is very analogous to a community foundation. We just define our community as all of the Methodist churches across the state of Missouri. And in that regard, we do a variety of things. We really try to be a back office for all of our churches. Mostly in areas relating to stewardship and generosity. We started back in 1967, so we've been around quite a while. And in 67, we started from scratch. Fast forward over 50 years, and we're now an integral part of the life of our churches across the state. We have a little over $100 million in assets under administration, and we provide grants and scholarships and manage funds for our churches. We help donors create endowments and plan gifts. So it's a whole host of things. And what has made this unusual season of pandemic particularly interesting is certainly the churches have been as hard hit as anyone by the inability to gather. The churches are by definition communities. And communities where people like to get together, either for activities of all sorts, or also Methodists are famous for committee meetings. We have lots of meetings, and we attend those meetings. That's how we, do our business, and that's just been called off. So we've had to, all learn how to do the video chats of various stripes, and during this year, our director of development, our statewide director of development, Laura Murphy, who is our other guest here, came on board full time and with just tons of ideas and enthusiasm, especially around this new venue, this new online meeting capability. And part of meeting is also part of our educational function. We always are used to doing live workshops. Well, those have all migrated online as well. And so that's kind of the focus of our conversation today. And we've just been really pleased with the ability to keep in contact and tend the relationships among our constituents.
Laura, do you want to introduce yourself and
Sure.
share a little bit about what your role is?
Sure. I am actually an ordained elder in our conference. So I am clergy and have been used to being in the church. So I'm used to kind of thinking the way our clients now think of what they need in their churches. And as director of development, yes, part of my job is to generate funds and incomes through development. But I also like to refer to myself as the generosity generator, and how can we lead our churches and help them move from an idea of scarcity into an idea of generosity in their churches. And everybody's at different levels of that. But when COVID hit, there was a shift, obviously, in thinking for every business out there, and including ours. And it was actually last September, we launched our first webinar. And I kept thinking, if I was in the church, what would I want to hear? And we were hearing a lot of things, for example, of how do we generate income into our church when people aren't coming into the building anymore? And I also started to hear a lot from pastors of exhaustion. The creativity kind of dries up through some of this. And I thought, where can we speak into that? So our webinars kind of started out of a practical standpoint, and sometimes they've been real practical, like how do you help a pastor that's feeling lonely? Because there's a lot of loneliness. And sometimes it's very technical, like what do you do if we need help with cybersecurity? And there has been, of course, everything across the way in that.
I love that you guys are so in tune with your audience. I think that Laura is like this lovely little secret weapon in your team that can like give you that insight, because really whenever you're picking topics to educate your audience about, it's not just about what you need them to know, it's about what they want to know. And if you can get them in for what they want to know and also tell them what they need to know at the same time, then you're like winning, right? And I know that it's not just you guys who felt this way. So any of you other nonprofits out there, like there are so many of them that have had this same challenge of just not having the ability to gather. And that's so much of what your guys' incomes rely on, right?
Right.
So tell me about the audience that you're fostering with these events that you're doing.
We have a real direct audience of pastors in Missouri that are at Methodist churches. I mean, so it's not like we have to advertise outside of there. But what I kind of learned in that is we got going, do we have an accurate email list to actually make contact to these folks? How are we doing in our social media? And kind of heightening those areas so we could focus in. So that's our audience. But then from that, we can grow it into, how about leaders in the church? People that sit on their council and governing boards, and then lead it out past that into parishioners within the church. But right up front, I knew we couldn't do all of it all at once. So we started with the pastors and the clergy. And I felt it was real important that if we did quality, they would return. And so it's real important to get quality speakers, topics that they want to hear about. Otherwise, we just kind of blend into the background with all the other things that are being offered. Because there's a webinar. Pastors tell me they could be on webinars all day long with the amount of information they're getting now. So we're in a new channel that we have to figure out how to stand out in.
I love that advice. Friends, listen to that. Start focused and start small. That is where, like, it's so much easier to learn from a small focused audience than it is to just try to do everything for everyone all at the same time. You'll just overwhelm yourself. So that is terrific advice, Laura.
Good.
And the other thing that I hear in that statement was that you guys aren't like creating all this content yourself. It sounds like you guys are inviting some guests in to present. So tell me a little bit about that.
David, why don't you speak to the big one that we focused on? We had a big one, as well as we had a lot of small webinars, and I'll take the small ones, which were like, we've just reached out to, sometimes it was a counselor that I knew. Can you talk on loneliness? One was actually my husband, because he's an IT expert. Why go hunt down another one? One time it was somebody that is an expert in the field that I knew could be recognized. And so it's a variety of those kind of things, but we also focused on a bigger name. And David, why don't you tell a little bit about that one that we encountered?
Well, the entire staff is kind of always on the lookout for potentially engaging presenters, both around a particular topic or just a presenter that is very good at it. And we kind of ran across both in a lady that we met through another webinar we attended. Her specialty area is risk management. And while that sounds like a very dry topic in many respects, as she defines it, it's a very broad and integral facet of everything we do. And in fact, it's not just worrying about what can go wrong. It's part of strategic planning to make sure things go right. And I'm blanking on her name. Her last name is Herman.
Melanie
Herman. with the nonprofit Risk Management Center. And one of the things I think a good webinar presenter does is you can't take too much time, and you've got to keep it moving. I think certainly no webinar should go over an hour, and really a tight 45 minutes is about right.
Mm-hmm.
Another phenomenon we have noticed, and we've kind of commiserated with other colleagues who have noticed a very similar phenomenon, and that is about 50% of the people who register attend. And the other 50%, we hope, are waiting to go back and view the recording. We're still, trying to kind of sort that one out, but that seems to be a pretty common phenomenon.
Well, and because you're a bigger presenter and we knew that it would be more broad, we put more into our marketing for that too. We sent out postcards, which we don't normally do. We'd made some personal invites. And actually, we had a really large attendance, like over 2/3 of the people that signed up also attended, which was a jump from where we normally are. And we had easily double the amount that we would have on one of our normal webinars. We've been averaging about 40 to 45 in a sign up for our webinars. And then the other thing we look at is how long do they stay on? And when somebody stays on the whole time, we know, and most of our webinars, people have stayed on the entire time. We know they're engaged. What we have is holding their attention because it's easy to click and go somewhere else.
You guys are so smart. Okay, friends. So out of that, what I love and what I just heard was the people who are considering doing these educational webinars, you do not have to create all this stuff on your own. There is a beautiful synergy that happens when you have guests on, like these smart people that I'm talking to right now, who can share stories, and then you don't have to create it all, right? And I love that you guys found somebody who was a big draw, because that helped you probably grow that audience and really get people in for something big. And then since you did such a good job, they're probably going to come back. And honestly, you guys must be doing a really great job, because 50% attendance is real good. Like, I'm lucky to get 25 to 30. And that's actually pretty good, like, averages across the board. So,
well, and certainly the past year, there have been a couple of instances where the topic of the moment was a no-brainer to get out in front of people with. And that was when we first went into shutdown, and when Congress first passed the initial relief bill. There was a lot of stuff in there to sort through and understand, and particularly for churches, for the first time ever, they were included in a federal loan program, the PPP loan program. So there was intense interest in getting up to speed and trying to understand if that's something that a particular local church should be involved in. And we tried to program material for that.
I have a question from our audience. This is kind of fun. Watch this fancy trick. Boom. Krista would like to know what platform you're using for registration to sign up for your webinars.
Presently, we're using Eventbrite. We've had a little learning curve in that. There is a pro to using Eventbrite and opening it up to anyone. And we had people picking up and joining our webinars from different parts of the country. But then after a while, we thought, some of what we're doing is really connected to our general audience here. So we are selective of whether we choose everybody to be public or if it's just for our general audience. We will be shifting over with our new website. We're going to use a form within our website, and for registration. Takes a little more work for us to manage, but we can make it so much more personable in response back to people and what we want. And also, it looks like it's coming from us and not Eventbrite.
And I do remember whenever we made that decision to use Eventbrite, it was that you guys were thinking about transitioning to a new website, and it just didn't make a bunch of sense for us to put all that work into updating the current site when it was going to have to happen again in the new one. So
Eventbrite is very functional, but it does, for instance, it's sort of analogous to posting a video on YouTube. Eventbrite will follow up with registrants in months later with a list of webinars they might enjoy, and it's just random, whatever their algorithm has chosen.
So how long ago, you guys said September of the year before, September 2019 would have been the first one that you did, right?
2020.
2020. Wow. I, for some reason, thought that it was earlier. Maybe
Well,
hung around the table.
we've been doing webinars earlier than that.
That's
That
true.
was, I mean, we were doing, for instance, the pandemic related topics in March and April of last year.
I guess we should say we got intense about it last September.
Yeah.
And then how often do you guys host your events?
We kind of had a learning curve there too, because there's a couple of us in the office and everybody gets excited about let's doing webinars. And we said, well, wait a minute, because not only do we have to look at where the webinars are going on our calendar, the communication leading up to it. And if we're flooding our audience's mailbox with these things, it's going to get tuned out. So we aim to have, I keep one that I do every month on the second Thursday of every month. My counterpart is also adding some, and his kind of vary around, kind of according to his speaker as well as what is being presented in the audience for it, because sometimes it's a more tight topic than a broad topic. But sometimes I kind of say we are organized enough to be spontaneous, that we have a good calendar, we're following it. So therefore, if we see a good opportunity to put a second or a third webinar into a month, we can get it in there, but we have to really be watching our calendar and making sure we're not overlapping.
Yeah, so around 2 a month is your goal. And if you have another opportunity that you can't pass by, you will might put another one in there.
Well, and we do have sort of programmatically more than one thing going at the same time, and with slightly different audiences.
Right.
And did you guys see a good response immediately, like as soon as you started doing these, or was it something that more like built along the way? When I say response, it's like signups and people staying on, and even any type of feedback.
We get better at anything. It's gotten better. We continue to figure it out. And I think at first, weren't we all figuring out webinars and how to use it and how to promote them? And then as the more we started to see some success, the more we offered, the better we got at it, the better success we've seen. And is it perfect all the time? No. Sometimes we'll land something and go, oh, we didn't realize it's something, because we coordinate a little bit with the Missouri Conference of Pastors. They, didn't realize they had something going on that week too. But we've learned to check out these different things.
We do benefit from the denominational connection in that way, in that there are some ability to spread the word through several different networks at the district level and the conference level. That is certainly helpful to us.
So that's amazing, because we call those strategic alliances in the business world, right? And so finding strategic alliances that will help you share what you're doing, it really alleviates some of that heavy lifting of promotion. So finding people that are closely aligned with you, like in your case, the conference, but in other cases, it could be anything. If you are a community foundation, it might be the city, right? Or an arts council within the city that will help you promote. That's huge. So always looking for those. It's like, it's free marketing, and it's beautiful, because then you can help even more people.
And Monica, the key is if we have something quality to offer them that's going to fit a need, they are more than happy to continue to promote with us these kind of events.
So now we just talked about one type of promotion, like using those strategic alliances. And I know that you guys use email and Facebook and that kind of thing. Can you share with people kind of what your cadence is to promote your events and what you do?
We try to stay organized about it. That was another learning curve of saying, okay, what is the rhythm? I feel like we're finally in a good rhythm about it. Make Rate does so much of our promotion and information that goes out there. And I really kind of looking ahead. I look at every quarter. What are we going to schedule for each quarter? Then how do we get that information to you folks in a timely manner so it can go out in a timely manner? And I always feel like I just want to get gold stars when I get it there with plenty of time and not putting a rush on everyone. I've got a program that's coming up in July, and I have the speaker, I have the time, I know the date, and I know the bio of the, and what were the topics going to be. And I've got that all together, and it's for July. Yeah. And so that takes some pressure off of us so we can enjoy these webinars. We can enjoy the process. So that's kind of the cadence of it. But again, we're organized enough of that. So if another one pops up, we can get that information to you folks in time to get it out.
Yeah, May Create is extremely helpful, and we have an ideal schedule of promotions that is managed by Erica at May Create, if we have all the information enough in advance. But she is also nimble enough if there is a rush.
Yep.
To kind of abbreviate that and still get it out pretty well. But she utilizes MailChimp and Facebook and all the social media that we can to schedule that.
And I've also learned that Erica likes frozen Snicker bars, so I can bribe her with those if we're really running late.
I didn't know that about her. I'm so glad you told me.
Yeah, use it if you need it.
I know. I think I should keep a stock of them in the office. I think one of the things that makes you guys easy to work with as clients is that you are planning ahead. Because one of the things that we were talking about earlier is that if you are the person in charge of the doing, and this isn't just May Create, it's any marketer, right? Any team, it could be a volunteer, it could be a paid staff member. If you're the person who's in charge of the doing, your job can be so hard if the people in charge of giving you the stuff to do stuff with are not planning ahead and being responsive. So you guys are actually great clients to work with in that way, which is why we can do this for you. Because there's some clients that we could not do it for them because they're just not as with it as you guys are. So you guys are great. So tell me a little bit about what you've learned from doing these events. What have you learned?
Go ahead, David. I'll let you start, and I'll go from there.
Well, we've kind of touched on several things. I think it's important to keep it in that. Again, brevity is a virtue in the world of online activities. You probably have information to fill an hour, even an hour and a half. That's just deadly. You've got to keep it lighter than that. And allow people to contact the speaker after the fact. Email, keep the conversation going one-on-one. People, my sense is it's a little challenging for folks to post timely questions in the chat in real time because they're listening to the next thing that's being said, so accommodating that very real need, especially in the sort of things we're doing, to make contact and really get a little bit of one-on-one Q&A going after the fact.
And I'd follow up with that in kind of a more practical manner too, is hospitality is so important. When we have in-person events, we provide hospitality, and that's difficult with a webinar, but we can do it with how we set up the emails beforehand, reminding people that the event is going to happen that week, that day, an hour beforehand, and how we word those emails. It's how you welcome people into it. And I always take a moment to kind of share of, okay, if you want to put your video on, great. If not, it's no problem. Giving those permissions, telling them ahead of time we will be on, for example, for 45 to 50 minutes of a presentation, and then we'll have 10 minutes to take questions so people know what to expect. Please give us questions in the chat. I'll be monitoring that. Please don't hesitate to ask. We will, if it's something that has to happen in the middle of the webinar. So that's a hospitality. And we actually did a workshop for 2.5 days. It was a preaching academy. And so we sent out goodie boxes out to our people, which included chocolate. You can mail that in the winter. And everybody loves our pens. Our pens were in there. We had a little craft they could do while they were listening. That's hospitality, and that's appreciated. So we can't forget about those things. The other thing we need to do is evolve. What worked in our first webinar doesn't necessarily work now. I'm working with somebody that's going to be our presenter tomorrow. And he says, I've learned that when you ask me a question or with somebody in the group ask a question, let's take down this PowerPoint on the screen and show our faces. It makes it, something more attractive for people to listen to. And I'm like, what a great idea. That's evolved. And I really try to talk to our presenters ahead of time and say, I'm going to ask you questions throughout this. And sometimes I do an interview style. Sometimes I let them present, but I'll ask a question or I will put it into a comment that will help our pastors really understand what he's getting at. And I've been told over and over that makes it so much more personable, back to that hospitality.
And I would underscore that even when it's not, it's not a full-blown conversation, that little bit of breaking up the monotony of a talking head is extremely helpful. It energizes, I think, the main speaker to kind of get out of just a presentation mode and a little more into a communication mode.
Yep. And creates more questions. People ask more questions that way.
Yeah,
too.
to have the moderator just there to kind of almost be their surrogate questioner.
I think that's a wonderful idea because I find a lot of the times that when I'm presenting, I'll be like, hey, so do you guys have questions? And nobody says anything. But when I have a moderator, so I'm giving a presentation for someone else's organization, and that moderator stops me and asks questions, it like is stimulating permission. It makes it so they see this culture of question answer and they're more likely to get involved. And I think it just clarifies the point. Or like I have one group, the Missouri Women's Business Center. I give the same talk like every quarter for them. And it's great because they know what the questions are going to be beforehand. And they'll be like, wait a second, we need to clarify this, Monica. And then they'll stop and they'll like clarify based on a question that they heard last quarter. And I'm like, this is so great. Like, thank you.
And Monica, it doesn't hurt to even ask a few people ahead of time. I know enough of the people that attend that I can say to a couple of them, would you please make sure you ask a question? Because then it makes it easier for the others to ask questions. I don't think that's cheating. I think that's encouraging.
Yeah, they say that I'm supposed to be prepared with questions afterwards that I'm just going to answer. But it's hard to do that on your first one because you haven't heard the questions yet. But then if you can get questions from people and answer them, then you can answer them on repeat in your other presentations, if that makes sense. Don't know if I'm talking in circles, but yeah. Okay, friends. So 2 more questions before we wrap ourselves up here. Any advice that you'd give someone who's considering hosting virtual educational events?
I'd say do it.
Yeah, I would not hesitate to just dive in. You can't make a mistake, really. I mean, I guess you could just shut it down and run away, but this is the conversational aspect of this is the strength of it, and the intimacy of it's sort of together apart.
And I continue to say quality. Get somebody who's excited, passionate about it. I would rather have a passionate speaker who gets people excited rather than the most knowledgeable one out there that's going to bore everybody to tears. And then a real easy trick that I've learned too is have somebody, log on ahead of time, make sure you don't have any technical issues, and have somebody else run your Zoom, because as the host, when you're also trying to make your guests feel comfortable and welcome everybody, somebody else can be letting people in, and also just kind of ask around. I learned a lot just by attending other webinars. So start there.
Yeah, I love that advice of having someone else run your Zoom. So whenever we are doing ours, Erica almost always, your Erica, the very Erica that loves frozen Snickers, apparently, she will like manage the chat window and also just like watch and keep things flowing and make sure that everybody has their technical challenges solved. And then I can focus on making sure that things are going okay. So like we didn't learn that for a while. I kind of learned it the hard way after having a really challenging one that I ran for somebody. And I was like, whoa, we should have had like 2 more people producing this thing because this was not easy.
Well, it makes your guest more comfortable when they have somebody, if they run into technical issues, somebody who could walk them through it. And if your guest is comfortable, that makes a world of difference too.
We even put our phone number, like, hey, if you're having trouble logging in, here's our phone number. You can call the office. We'll talk you through this, because that's like what goes back to that hospitality thing that you were talking about, is just foreseeing the potential challenges, helping alleviate them.
Hey, and Monica, some of our pastors have actually gone into homes and helped people learn Zoom so that they can be in Zoom in their congregation, but then they're starting to attend webinars with us.
That's awesome. See, all the love is just pouring out from all the educating. Great.
And helping each other along. That's what we need to be doing.
So true. So hopefully everybody learned all of the awesomeness today. I really enjoyed hearing all of your stories and everything that you had to say, because you guys are so incredibly right and very smart about how you've gone about doing this. So if anybody wants to learn more about the Missouri United Methodist Foundation, where would they go to find that information?
The website, which is beautiful, we have our classic website, which was designed by May Create many years ago and is still a durable, wonderful website. The address is www.mumf, as in foundation.org. And we are in the process of freshening our website with a major facelift for the first time in a long time. And May Create is deeply involved in that, and we're looking forward to unveiling that in the weeks ahead. It's
going to look a lot different. I'm excited about all of the new and like modern design stuff that we have in it. It's going to be really pretty.
We are excited too.
Yeah. And then Krista says, this has been so helpful. Thank you for taking the time to share with us today. So thank you very much, you guys, for taking the time to share with us today. And anybody who hopped on to this Facebook Live, like halfway through, don't worry, because you can still like rewind and watch back to the beginning. But then too, if you're a podcast listener, you can catch us out on the Nonprofit Marketing with Purpose podcast, because we'll release this out in a couple weeks. So that way more people can hear about how they can use educational events to deepen their relationship with their audience. Thanks, guys.
Wonderful. Thank you.